under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are you ready, Judy? Are we good? Are we good? No, I didn't want to interrupt, but everyone is waiting for welcome, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started, and we have much to do. And Brad, do we have modifications?
We do. I'd like to remove from the consent agenda the minutes of the March 13th meeting. I understand those have not gone through their normal editing process before getting here. So
we had a meeting, though, right?
We had a meeting. Yeah. We'll approve the minutes next time around, but I understand that had not been gone through the normal editing process. We'll pull that for tonight.
Okay. Anything else, Brad?
That was it.
And since Brad mentioned next time around, because of vacation, our next board meeting is actually next week, correct? On the 3rd. It is the first Tuesday of April, not the second Tuesday, and then it'll be on the 17th. We will be discussing budget items, well, the budget over the next few meetings, and so those are important meetings, so mark your calendars. And on we go, and receiving hearing delegations, and Nan Bell is signed up. And Nan, there you are.
Here I am. Hang on.
A librarian with books, who knew? I mean, that's...
Wow. How can you live without books?
Don't break the table.
Oh, sir, yes, sir.
I like books, Nan, so we're good.
Good.
Yeah, this thing... Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to let you... I'm Nan Bell, Ithaca High School Library. And I wanted to let you know something we've been up to with Mr. Powers and Miss Connie Evelyn.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Powers noticed when he was in AP that the age of the collection was really disastrous. In the 400s, the language section, for instance, the average age was 1973. It wouldn't do. History, geography, the average age was 1984. Too old, too old. So he scraped up some funds, and I wanted to show you some of the results. So, in library land, there is the thing of the right book to the right student at the right time. Vietnam project came in, student was studying Ho Chi Minh. I just picked this up, $35. However, she is new to this country, her Burmese is better than her English, and she blanched when she saw this. So we kept looking, we found a good chapter in this, Encyclopedia Vietnam. $125, neither of which we could have done if we hadn't had the help of Mr. Powers' grant. So, happy student, happy us. Languages, this one's been out already a couple of times. Stone soup in Chinese. Nobody else has this in the region or district. Turkic languages, a dictionary of Turkic languages. And we have Azerbaijan students and we have Kazakhstani students. So now they have something. It's a start. Yeah. Yeah. And actually this is even more dear to my heart. These are books that aren't here because they're checked out. Los Juegos de Hambre. You get that? Los Juegos de Hambre. Oh, yes. Went out the first day, I put it out. And La Señora Frisbee. Y los ratas de Nim. So we're getting closer all the time to an excellent collection in those ways. Anything else to show you particularly? Oh yeah. How about a history of China that was published in 2011 rather than 1975? So we're happy in the library. Thanks, Mr.
Good. Thank you, Nan. 1973 was a pretty good year, but that's okay.
It was a good year. They tended to focus just on that.
Thanks, Nan. Pat, Eric.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. The information I'm providing this board is intended to bring transparency to our situation with regards to Newman's Charter School. The purpose of my efforts is to enlighten all members of our school community about an entity that we have been forced to fund for over $2.5 million of our school tax dollars. Another $1 million will be going to fund it next year. Perhaps you're aware that New Routes recruitment notices are running with regularity in our PTA publications. This one ran in the IHS PTA newsletter sent out Sunday night. It reads as follows. New Routes Charter School is enrolling 2012-13. If you're considering enrolling your student for 2012-13 school year and have not already done so, now is the time to come for a visit and to submit your enrollment form. To see a list of our upcoming events or learn more about New Routes, please visit the school, etc. The full version of this announcement appears in the DeWitt Middle School newsletter, Blue Notes, which was released today on its front page. The fact that these recruitment announcements appear in ICSD's own publications sends a very mixed message to the parents of our district. They can be construed as an endorsement of New Routes and their efforts to recruit much larger numbers from the ICSD. Their charter requires that they increase their numbers, and the race is on again this spring to assist as many students as possible from ICSD. I encourage Dr. Brown and the Board of Education to establish a policy regarding any information coming from New Routes. This is a failing school that draws a huge amount of our district funds. We need to prevent this from happening further. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Student reps, if no one else has signed up. I see no one else wants to speak. Student reps, Allison. Nice job on the pajama game. Go ahead.
This weekend, IHS's spring musical opened and closed. Over 100 people worked to put up this production. Over 80 of those were students. This weekend is Cabaret Night, one of the largest fundraisers for the school orchestra. There will be a variety of student and staff performers in various acts, and that's at Friday and Saturday at 7:30, and we hope you'll all come.
On March 15th, the IHS Student Council hosted the annual staff breakfast. Many teachers and staff came, and it was a great success. There were pancakes. Also, this Friday marks the end of our third market period.
At the last board meeting, someone on the board was talking with Mr. Powers about what classes IHS offers to prepare students for life after school. I believe Mr. Powers forgot a class. There's WISE, which is Individualized Senior Experience, which is actually through our English department. And it's really cool because it emphasizes learning how to learn. You get a mentor in the community, and you basically find out how to solve your problems without having a teacher there to like hold your hand along the way. So it really helps with what a student would experience outside of a classroom setting. Also, there have been further library changes. F16, which is a room in the library, is now open to students as a quiet zone, and they've increased the capacity by signing students out when they return to lunch after being in the library.
Great. Anything else? Thanks, Guy. LACS had a big day today with debates, etc. So that's where I saw Aviv. So we'll move on. Any board responses at this time? We not seeing anything. We will move on, and our very good friends from IPEI and Kids Discover the Trail with an exclamation mark.
With a balloon.
With a balloon, Jennifer.
Or two. Come on, ladies. I hope that's not blocking anyone's view of anything.
No, and Jennifer, please introduce everyone as they come up, and it's great to have you here, Jennifer.
Yes.
It's great to have you here. It's all really nice. We're happy to be here. I'd like to introduce Randy Beckman, the KDT teacher coordinator, without whose expertise, positive attitude, and energy, KDT would not happen. I'd like to introduce Marilyn Mayer from Northeast School, and Allison Fritz.
I didn't know this.
There she is. Grab a chair. Grab a chair. Teacher in the Ithaca City School District. We're going to try to be as short and succinct as possible to let you know of the Kids Discover the Trail update. I am Jennifer Engel, the Vice President of IPEI, the Ithaca Public Education Initiative. This is the annual report to the board. You have in front of you a written report with all kinds of exciting yet dry information, but it is required, so we're going to make sure that you have a chance at the end to ask questions and make any comments that you would like to concerning Kids Discover the Trail, which is a unique collaboration between the Ithaca City School District, the Ithaca Public Education Initiative, and the 8 sites of the Discovery Trail. Just bringing that up on the side pad. One more of my glasses.
I can do that. I can expand it, and you can just keep talking, Jennifer, while I try to find you.
2012 marks the 8th year of Kids Discover the Trail. We have been at nearly 100% participation for the last several years, involving over 150 classrooms of students, and that it equals about 2,900 kids a year in grades pre-K through 5, who have the opportunity to experience a curriculum-based field trip to each of the 8 Discovery Trail sites. The goals of Kids Discover the Trail are to enhance the school curriculum through experiential learning, to provide equal access to all students to the resources of the Discovery Trail, to expand the awareness of the Discovery Trail, and to promote understanding and respect amongst students from different neighborhoods within the Ithaca City School District. I'd like to put Marilyn Mayer up for discussion. She has some exciting things to tell you as a person in the trust.
Great. Thank you for this opportunity. What I did is I interviewed all of the teachers at Northeast at each grade level, and I took comments, tried to keep them brief from each of the grade levels. And kindergarten said they love the chance that their students get to meet students from other schools in Ithaca. You know, this is for many students their first time in a school, and they're hearing me centered. They're not even really aware that, oh, there are children my age in another school. So they really enjoy that. Students get to go to a place that they could visit with their own family, and they enjoy that. First grade said, I'm amazed at how many of the students remember their buddies from the previous year. And they're students who, by the time they're in first grade, some of them have already been to Disney World a couple times, and they've never been to any of the places in Ithaca that are true gems. So the teachers said that they were really happy that their children could see there were neat, fun, cool things to do right here in Ithaca. Second grade said they really enjoyed having their students have pen pals with the other schools. Just old-fashioned writing was very popular. Third grade, they said the Cornell plantation trip seems custom fit for their developmental age. They really can't say enough good about the Cornell plantations trip. And they said they strongly recommend for teachers to take advantage of the extra buddy-up trip. And maybe I'll address that a bit. Fourth grade, they go to the 8 Square Schoolhouse, and it's probably the single most well-remembered trip. I taught at DeWitt for 10 years. 9 of them were at the 6th grade, and I remembered that would be 2 years later. Every year, students would talk so fondly about the 8 Square Schoolhouse. And the teacher said taking a step back in time and remaining in character for an entire day is a powerful learning experience. 5th grade, the chance to have 2 trips at the 5th grade level is really quite a treat. And the 5th grade has 2 trips because the next year the schools come together at the middle school level, and the idea is to try to break down any barriers so students can at least know one person from another school. A couple years I had a student in my class, and we buddied with Caroline, and was another student, and they're both going to LACS. So that was just wonderful because, you know, that's a very small student population, and they were so happy to have found each other. The Cayuga Nature Center trip is a great way to bring adolescents together because they have actual activities that are non-threatening and fun. And the Lab of Ornithology, it's a world treasure, and it's right here in our backyard. And if it weren't for its inclusion in the Kids Discover the Trail program, probably most students would be unaware that it's there. And then lastly, our principal, Jeff Tomasic, was kind enough to write just a little paragraph. And he said, Kids Discover the Trail provides each and every Northeast student access to many of Ithaca's cultural gems. The KDT program is now fully integrated into our instructional program, and I'm sure this is not just true for Northeast, I'm sure it's true at every school. The fact that KDT field trips are seamlessly tied to our program is a sign of its success, but it also leads to the risk that folks don't fully recognize this is a separate entity. I think sometimes people don't realize that it's privately funded and it could go away. So we're very, very thankful for every year we have it. And finally, he said, I'd like to formally thank and recognize IPEI for their tremendous work on behalf of our students at Jeff Damascus. And now Allison Fritz, who's a first grade teacher at South Hill, will speak.
Okay, and I'm going to stand up so you guys can see too, because I just took my buddy trip to the Museum of the Earth last week, and so my children were in the process of writing thank you notes to IPEI and also to Johanna, who is our docent. So you probably can't see that, but that's a cute little picture of all of them. Many of them still sitting with their buddies, their new friends. You mentioned somebody, they realized there's somebody at the same grade level. One of my kids told the nurse, it was great, I met a high school buddy. They're a little confused on that. For me, I feel like the equity piece of it is great. I have one child who, for lots of reasons, really took 2 field trips his whole high school career. The elementary school on up. 8 square was the one in 4th grade. He really did no field trips. So I am so grateful that we've started this program and all kids are getting trips, even if they're moving from school to school. And that brings me to the other piece. There's a little boy in there that we do small moment writing in 1st grade. And so I asked the kids, what was your small moment from today? And my small moment was when the other class was leaving the bus. First they came to South Hill and had snack. And this one little boy had gone to South Hill Pre-K, and the teacher said he just lit up. He was so excited to be back there. And on the bus ride, he asked me, you know, do you know my brother? Do you know Romello? Do you know Divine? Do you know? He went through the whole list. And when he said goodbye, it was just so sweet. And, you know, he's waited for a hug. And that was my small moment. So I'm just really pleased. And I blew up 2 of the letters. I really only had money for a couple, but this one is not to IPI, it's to Johanna. Thank you, and anyway, I just wanted you to see the work. Thank you for your hard work. I loved the American Mastodon. I also liked the right whale. I loved playing with a person in a different group, meaning a different class, and then she signed it, American Mastodon. And another one, and then I put some quotes on the bottom in their own spelling. Don't worry, folks. Thank you, IPEI, for the book. I love it. Thank you for the ticket. My favorite part was when I got to see a skeleton whale. My buddy was a good friend. Then she crossed out sincerely and wrote love for me. And on the bottom, some of the quotes I put, a little boy knowing that dinosaurs learned to be around for 225 million years. I liked digging, and I found a tooth, spelled top. Thank you for all the hard work you've done organizing the trip. I really appreciate it. Because I appreciate it. But yeah, I got it. We got those long ones. So anyway, I'm just very, very thankful to IPI and to Kids Discover the Trail. I think it's just something really, really special that our district has.
So I'm Randy, and I teach 1st grade at Bell Sherman School, and I'm the teacher liaison to Kids Discover the Trail, and it's just a pleasure to be here with you tonight. As many of you know, this is our full circle year, and that's the year that the children who started in the 1st year of our program as pre-K children, they're now in 5th grade. And this means, I've done the addition, Jennifer, over 800 classes have taken trips to the 8 Discovery Trail sites, meaning over 15,000 children have gone on trips. Well, it's thrilling to give all children an opportunity to discover their world right here in Tompkins County through field trips. I see the social component as the essential feature of this program. We're proud that, as Jennifer mentioned, children from differing neighborhoods who will eventually feed to the same middle school go on trips together. Classrooms buddy up for the trip. It means 2 teachers get to work together and the children are paired between classes. They meet in a variety of ways before the trip. They write letters. With new technology, they Skype. I actually saw in my learning plan this morning, what did it say? Talk to children at other schools on Skype. So this is giving a real authentic reason to use that. The children typically share a seat on the bus together and they're engaged in cooperative learning activities on the trip. And on a side note, this past summer through a grant from the Ithaca City School District and hard work on the part of elementary teachers from all schools and all grade levels, we now have more cooperative pre- and post-lesson plans for our trips based on Marsano's strategies. Last year, through the generosity of an anonymous donor, thank you, whoever you are, 64 classes took, we call, additional trips or buddy-up trips with their partner classes, meaning another opportunity for children to be together. I read this portion to my 18-year-old who was a graduate of the Ithaca schools, and she said, "You missed the point." I said, "What's the point?" And she said, "Children from vastly differing backgrounds and communities who had little opportunity to meet one another before middle school now have meaningful, authentic interactions." She got it. Thank you, Addie. As many of you know, we're an evaluation-driven program. We gather data about everything. So we know that even though teachers volunteer to be a part of this program, we are at 100% participation. And we also know that teachers are overwhelmingly positive about the trips. As I said earlier, while going on field trips is a remarkable part of the program, the piece that makes it unique is the buddy-up component. I'd like to take the remainder of my time to tell you about a fascinating piece of research we did last year. Thank you, Mac. We surveyed all 6th graders in our 3 middle schools about their perceptions of KDT last year, and the results are truly inspiring. About 75% of the students said they developed a new interest as a result of one or more of the field trips. As part of KDT, each child's given a book. Almost all of the students remembered all of the books they had received, and about half to 2/3 of students reported they still have a given book. In terms of buddies, 94% of the students remembered at least one of their buddies. 77% had seen one of their buddies during the school year, and over half of the students said they'd become friends with their buddies. Finally, all students were asked to complete the following sentence. Taking field trips to different places around Tompkins County changed me because I got to know Ithaca better. I normally don't get to go places that are this fun. I never know they had fun things around Ithaca. I now know I'd hate to move. It helped me explore the different things that the community has to offer. I hadn't been to any of those places before. And finally, many children mentioned some kind of self-discovery. I started to think nature's cool. I learned to cooperate with different people and in different situations. And from one student, I didn't know you could have so much fun learning. So thank you to the children and the teachers and families who participate in the program. Thanks to the bus garage for getting the children to and fro, the school secretaries who order the buses, the lunch servers who prepare bag lunches, to the building administrators for helping to oversee instruction around the trips. Thanks to the community for so generously supporting this program. And thanks especially to all of you on the school board for making this program a reality.
Absolutely incredible, no? We barely need to say a word. However, I do want you to know that at IPEI, we don't call it spring, we call it KDT season. It is now KDT season. Should you be so inclined, we welcome you. Check out IPEI.org. There will be a schedule. We would love for anyone to come on a trip. It is transformative. It truly is transformative. And now for the business portion, which is that on behalf of the IPEI Board of Directors and our extremely generous and extremely engaged community, I ask you all to please accept payment for Kids Discover the Trail 2012. Let's join. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Questions, comments for Seth, please?
Yeah, I just have to say, you know, everyone on the board is in this position because we're committed to kids, and we really, you know, sometimes our job doesn't involve issues with kids, but it's always great to hear experiences like this. Kind of brings it home of why we're here and what we're trying to do. So thanks for sharing all the good stuff you did. And I've been to the ropes course, and it was terrifying.
Other questions? Jennifer, I believe in my reading, since I think I did read it, KDT is expanding countywide, or is that a move, or?
That move is in the air. It is in the hands of the Discovery Trail. Right now, Kids Discover the Trail exists in Trumansburg under a program called Trumansburg Kids Explore and Discover. Very similar, but dissimilar to our Kids Discover the Trail. In the back of our minds, at the 2004, and I should at least speak for my own mind, 2004 roundtable discussion that the Community Foundation hosted where we talked about this event, I envisioned an enormous bus and every kid in Tompkins County getting to every site. We started with the largest, most immovable, most incredibly stuck school district, which is the Ithaca City School District. And at the time, that's where we thought would be, if we can do this here, we can do this anywhere. And it is the case that Trumansburg is doing wonderfully. Their trip does not involve a social component, which has to happen here. The Discovery Trail has just embarked on a feasibility study to see if this could be expanded to the rest of Tompkins County schools. Everyone would love to have it at their school in some form or another. It remains to be seen if it will happen.
Thanks, Jennifer, and I think certainly IPEI has helped this district become less stuck, so if nothing else. And I would certainly say I don't believe a month goes by, Brad, where we do not see an IEPI grant on our consent agenda, a red and gold grant, a teacher grant.
It's always something.
There's always dollars that are coming from IPEI to help programming, the value added in the district, those things that help us make the student experience special in Ithaca. We're pretty special here, but IPEI makes us more so. But nothing but thanks to your work. Certainly Terry Burns, who could not be here tonight, but the president of IPEI. Terry does a great job, and it's really a tremendous collaboration that has developed. And not every district has a foundation associated with it. Other districts are starting them, and we are fortunate that the IPEI has been a partner for as long as it has been, and it's been, well, we had a celebration. It's been 10 years, right?
It's been 15.
15 years. Sorry, it was the 15 year. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, exactly. And KDT's got 8 years, right? So, thank you all, and that's about all I can say. So, thank you. Yeah, Judy, ma'am.
I'd also like to thank you, but I'd also like to tell you that, as a former teacher, I was very jealous.
We're sorry, Judy. Thank you. Well, again, IPEI does rest on the shoulders of our extremely generous and engaged community, and we don't want to ever underestimate or forget or take that for granted. So, thank you.
The district as well. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. We'll move on to the consideration of accounts and
Consent agenda.
I'm sorry.
Consent agenda.
Right.
I'll move it.
Consent agenda. Sorry.
I'll second.
And within that consideration of accounts, any comments regarding any questions, comments? For Judy. I'm getting distracted.
No, that's for Kira.
That's for Kira.
Kira. There we go. Just keep passing it along. The consent agenda. Any comments, highlights? We're good? All in favor? That's everyone. Moving right along. And we go, Dr. Brown. After the consent agenda, typically
It's me.
comes Dr. Brown.
And I do have 2 items, but I wish to speak to the treasure that is IPI first. And I'm struggling, I know I don't have enough time to speak to it, and I'm struggling with the words because I've never seen anything like it. When you think about the spirit of collaboration and what they're doing for us, and how they've come to me to collaborate, how they've come to me to innovate, how they've come to me to partner. Typically, as superintendent, when something like that is happening, someone oftentimes gives you a bill. And in this case, we continue to get checks. So I'm struggling. I hope our community understands that we have a treasure here. I have a friend who just accepted a job as superintendent in a very large district. And when called today to brag about his job acceptance, I said, well, you don't have an IPEI. No, that was the first thing that comes to my mind. And when looking at the data, our local organization raises more money for our local school district than one that's in a very large metropolitan area. And I wish to put that data piece on the table along with some qualitative data that I've recognized. So thank you for making my job fun and easier. I appreciate it. Moving along, the item I wish to share with the community and the public, we just had our last commendation ceremony in Culp Auditorium. And it was a great event. We recognized some of the best student athletes in the state. We recognized some students who were honored internationally, nationally, in the state level for mathematics, writing, technology, integration. We recognized a teacher who received tenure. So when shaking the hands of those folks and handing out the awards and in some cases a check for what they've achieved, it made me think about how we're thinking different and doing things differently here. As we recognize so many young people coming across the stage, I was thinking about all the districts in our country that are removing support for the same programs that we were recognizing excellence for tonight. So thank you, Board of Education, for allowing us, for one, recognizing young people for excellence and staff for excellence, but also supporting programs that are allowing them to be excellent in their particular fields of interest before and after school and during school. And lastly, I wish to remind the board that we are looking to put out a schedule. We'll have a schedule out in the coming week that speaks to our community conversations. We had our first community conversation today, and it was sort of a pilot or trial run. I had an opportunity to sit down with folks at the Finger Lakes Independence Center. And we had a great conversation about what the district has done well from their perspective, some things we need to do better with. And I also had a chance to walk through the Board of Education priorities and what we're thinking as far as moving that work forward. It was an outstanding conversation for an hour. And we're looking to do multiple conversations like that across the community, particularly in places that we haven't traditionally been. And I said to the group today, we were purposeful starting with them, because oftentimes folks with disabilities are the last folks we engage with when we're looking to do huge initiatives. And today they were very appreciative of us starting with them and using that as a trauma. But be looking for a schedule of those upcoming events that are going to occur throughout the community, including barbershops and other places. And that's all I have to say.
I'm not going to the barbershop. Because if that happens...
This is what happens at the barbershop.
Here to be different. So on to, thank you, Dr. Brown, very much, and on to school district business. And item A, contract for educational support professionals of Ithaca. Entertain motions.
So moved.
And
Sorry.
do we have...
What did she move?
The contract for the educational support professionals.
Was that in Dropbox?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, it was.
I didn't see it.
I didn't see it. Is it in Dropbox?
Yeah, I did not see it.
Is it in the HR committee Dropbox, or?
Probably not.
I didn't think it was.
So I'm curious as to what she's moving, because I can't see it. I can't read it.
It's the four-year contract.
Well,
Right.
What am I putting in the minutes here? I don't have a resolution that I'm looking at.
Resolved to accept a contract with...
Is that what you said, Judy?
Yes. To accept the contract for the educational support professionals of Ithaca.
Dated
2010-11 through
11, 12,
13-14.
13, 14.
Hey, could we,
So do the math.
would it be appropriate just to adjourn this for a few minutes and
get a resolution.
get it done?
that would be great.
Okay.
we'll bring it back.
Well, I mean, we'll be in public session for a little while here.
All right. So let's skip over this if we could. Right? Bring back to it.
You're tabling it.
Yeah, table. Just change the agenda.
And right, and looking for some guidance from someone.
Just table over the next hour.
Table.
Right, exactly, and we don't have a proper resolution at this time, so I'm going to say that we really did not.
Let's just move it to after budget.
Yeah, we'll just move it. We'll move the item, but I really don't think we had a resolution yet, so we will not table a resolution that does not exist. Okay. That was right. That was my point. So, we're going to go on to item B, which is approval of continuous improvement plan for DeWitt Middle School. And there is a resolution associated with this, but I'll let somebody talk first.
And we will talk just a bit. Mr. Knight, would you like to come to the table? We may just point out a few bullet points. As you saw in your Dropbox, hopefully, a very long document that speaks to the continuous improvement plan for DeWitt Middle School. And Mr. Knight, I'm hoping you're going to help me. I'm going to take a shot at trying to summarize that plan, which is it took us a couple of hours to get through when you read it, as the state has access to read. I mean, it has access to put it together. I've outlined a couple of bullet points, and I'm hoping you'll help me as I go through it, if I miss some things. So when reading that plan, from my perspective, it goes after what we're saying we're going after as an organization: teaching and learning framework, our human capital efforts, and PLC, professional learning communities. And when thinking about the teaching and learning framework, in the plan is embedded an approach to universal screening. So Mr. Knight and others in the school are going to be doing a universal screening for all incoming students to know exactly where they are and what supports need to be in place going forward. It also speaks to our response to intervention process and how DeWitt's going to strengthen the RTI process in the building. It also speaks to literacy across the curriculum, and from my readings, it looks like we're going to have every teacher think literacy, regardless of their content area and their area of specificity. Then moving along to PLC work, it speaks to how they're going to be using data to inform their dynamic shift of students and teaching and learning. It also speaks to implementing a formative and summative common assessment model. We've talked about common assessments often. They're really going to go after the common assessment approach at DeWitt next year. And then finally, the human capital efforts. What we've done is, in the budget we're going to talk about later, we've added some additional FTE at DeWitt Middle School to allow for a true middle school concept. Am I capturing that right? That's right. We're going to for the first time, we're going to have, maybe the first time in a long time, we're going to have two teams per grade level, which is actually going to allow us to operate more like a middle school for the first time versus a junior high school. Absolutely. If I've captured that right. And then I'm going to give you a chance to jump in a second. I'm happy that I'm capturing you nodding right now. And then the data coach, that's also part of the plan, and for resource support, we're providing a data coach at DeWitt that's going to help educators understand how to use data more effectively and actually use the teaching and learning portal that we're rolling out, which the plan also speaks to using to look at data, look at common assessment information, and understand what's happening with young people. Did I do a good job?
You did a fantastic job. As a matter of fact, I'm speechless because I know you guys operate on a time frame here, so I don't want to inundate you with any additional things that you already said. But that's pretty much in a nutshell what the DeWitt action plan looks like for the upcoming school year. If you notice, even though we were identified in the area of special educations for ELA, we didn't focus the plan specifically on that in terms of our presentation to you, because as the district vision is, all students achieving their dreams, our plan speaks to all children, not just the population which subgroup which you identified for. But there will be some specific things in terms of working with our students with special needs, as we see there's a great need in terms of improving that area as well. Things such as writing our IEP goals that match the general education goals that also are in alignment with the common core learning standards. So those are things we'll be working on. We'll also be looking at in terms of how to provide more additional support to the special needs population during the course of a school day outside of the targeted areas or the identified areas they're receiving per their IEP plans.
Hey, so, Mike, could we just, I don't know if maybe Dr. Brown said this when the start, but could you just, for the benefit of the public, tell us what this is and how it relates to the basis of why this plan was in place as far as the city and just kind of the brief background of.
Yes, what happened is a school does not reach the AYP in 2 years, then they go to what we call a senior status in per subgroup. So the state has used their assessments in ELA and our math to determine the performance of your students in those particular areas. And there's a certain benchmark score that the state has for each school, depends on the population of students, as per subgroup, as per school, based on attendance as well as the students' performance in those particular assessments. And so we as a school in the area of students with disabilities or special needs for the subject ELA did not reach that for 2 years in a row. So therefore we became identified as a senior school. As a part of the senior process, for your first year, you're required to do a school quality review, which actually gives you opportunity to look with a microscope at your school in terms of what are the specific areas in which you may have some needs and some areas that you will have some strengths in. So the areas in which you see there are some needs and growth, you'll have an opportunity to write recommendations as a part of this school quality review process. As a result of the school quality review process, you submit that, and then people from the BOCES area, which represent the state, will review it, and then they can also give additional recommendations for you in terms of writing your comprehensive education plans, which is what you have tonight, what we see tonight. So part of that comprehensive education plan is to address how we will improve the achievement of students with disabilities in the areas of ELA. As I said earlier, that's only a small drop in the bucket for the students at Dewey Middle Schools. There's subgroup obviously want to pay special attention to, but it's going to represent, which is a very large population, of course, but we also want to represent the other students as well.
And does that go with the theme we hear a lot about how there's this link between just good regular ed teaching versus, you know, our students with special needs, how there's an interplay between the two?
Well, yes, there is, because the students with special needs obviously have IEP goals that have to be met, and they have to be met in the general education classrooms. So it can be done a variety of ways. We, as a district, have started using co-teaching as a model to do that. In addition to resource rooms, I think we will use probably a hybrid in the upcoming years. We'll go back to using some consult teacher direct model, which means that special ed teachers also be in the classroom with general ed teachers, but they'll be responsible specifically for the achievement of those students who have been identified with IEPs in the classrooms. We'll continue to expand our co-teaching, whereas a special education teacher along with a general education teacher will be responsible for all students in the classroom as well. So hopefully this will help with some collaboration between general ed as well as the special ed, in addition to give the special ed some additional support. When the special ed attends the resource room, we look at it in terms of grouping them a little bit differently so that the special education teachers can provide services to all the students. Prior to this year, we've been grouping them based on how a schedule dictates it. But therefore, we can have at least 7 or 8 students, at least 7 students in the room with varying different needs, which makes it very difficult in the 39-minute class period for one teacher to address all their specific needs, specific skills in a particular area. So we're looking to do a more homogeneous grouping them by certain skill deficits, so that the teacher has a better chance of working with a larger number of students during that period of time. So that, and in addition, as I said earlier, writing our IEP goals to match the skill deficits that we see based on disability with the content area that general ed teaching has responsible for delivering.
Go ahead, Judy.
Are the students that you're going to group homogeneously, the special ed students or all the students in the class?
Or just the special ed students when they go to a resource room.
Okay.
Mac, you want to just walk me through the middle school model versus the junior high model? What's the difference?
Well, actually, the junior high is 7, 8, 9. The middle school is 6, 7, 8. There's a discrepancy because you have a K through 6 program in addition to a secondary ed program as well. So there's some certification issues that's in the middle school model. But to be more practical, we would like to have 2 distinct teams per grade level at the middle school, which is maybe a little different than the junior high, which the junior high is pretty much singletons. Everybody teach like in a silo pretty much, or by departments. We'd like to move away from that by grouping students at each grade level by having them assigned to 2 separate teams. Therefore, the teams would have a sole responsibility for the performance, the achievement, the parents' conferences. It's a smaller group of students in which that group of teachers will be working with. It allows for more collaborations. It allows for better PLC with interdisciplinary kinds of planning and project times. Also, utilizing their school day or restructuring the school day to provide additional support for those students that are on their team. So having the two teams will make it a little bit more effective in terms of making the teams kind of autonomy, giving them autonomy and resources for that group of students that they are assigned to them with.
Right, there's going to be probably a lot of folks listening that their kids went through DeWitt and there was a team model.
Yes.
And that was pretty familiar, but due to student numbers, I believe it didn't quite fit to do that for a few years. Or student numbers back up, they can do two teams, or what's the, how do we get back there now?
Well, last year we were at enrollment was 494. This year is 527. So there has been an increase.
Sure.
The fact that we are senior schools, I think we deserve to have additional FTE to give the students more personalized instructions. You know, particularly we have a large population of students with special needs compared to other schools in the districts. We also have other programs in our building that require special attentions, our artistic program, as well as our community-based programs and our SEAS program. So by having FTE will allow for those students with those particular needs to get the special attention that they so deserve.
Right, and that's part of the question is we are putting more FTE to work at DeWitt to deal with the senior status and really the improvement plan as well. And the improvement plan is going to take an investment by the community, and that you're dealing with that. And one of the ways to deal with that is changing back to the team format. Go ahead, Brett.
I'm just curious, Mac, you discussed that you're moving toward kind of a hybrid of some co-teaching, some with a special ed teacher coming into the classroom, some resource room. I'm just curious, as part of the process, what are the things did you look at and reject, and why did you reject them?
Reject around the co-teaching hybrid.
You've got a plan laid out. I assume it didn't come whole cloth first day that the group met. You must have discussed some other things. I'm curious what other options you looked at and rejected, and why did you reject them?
To be honest, I think we looked at more in terms of when we did the school card review, we kind of didn't find a lot of things to reject. We found a lot of things we were in need of. Okay, so therefore our action plans was kind of predicated on those needs, as opposed to, wow, we're doing a lot of things, you know, and they were not meeting the particular the needs of the population of students that we serve every day. So we weren't at a point of rejecting a lot of things. I think we're at a point in terms of how we can be more efficient and effective as providing services to the students that have been identified as in need. So you identified the hybrid model that I spoke to, and the reason I said that because co-teaching requires that the two teachers in the classroom have common planning time. So in our scheduling, we found out that some of those teachers did not have common planning time, but they were in a classroom with a general ed teacher. So since they're denied under the definition of co-teachings, define co-teachings in its realistic and practical sense, we decided that we should go to a consult teacher direct model so that the students could still, the special ed teachers still could have a place and a role in the classroom, but the role may change to more specifically working with the students with special needs. Okay. So, yes.
When I was teaching at Boynton, we had the two teams, but we had like a common planning time for all, let's say all 6th grade teachers. Right. Is that going to be in there?
It is. It is. Good. It would be, so if there's 2 teams on the 6th grades, one day of the week, those 2 teams would meet as one. Good. So we do have that in the plan. Okay. If one thing we reject, getting back to your question, Brad, is that we reject the idea that, especially in the resource room model, that special ed teachers would be least effective if we continue to schedule our special needs kids as the schedule, you know, let the schedule dictate that. We had to have more control over who was in the resource room so the homogeneous grouping could occur, as opposed to the heterogeneous grouping that had before. So that's the one thing I think we looked at, we rejected to move forward. Great.
You mentioned the 39 minutes.
Yes.
Is that something you want to reject, or is that, I mean, what's you've heard discussions about that?
Well, we're looking at that. I mean, obviously it's something we just can't wholeheartedly reject. We have to have a particular plan in place to also resolve the amount of instructional time. To some degree, it works well with middle-aged students because developmentally they are very hyper-energetic, so sitting longer than that would be kind of counterproductive. But even in a block schedule model, you can create that block of time to make it more meaningful and engaging for students. But I am remiss at the fact that, and amazed at the same time, that our teachers do wonderful work in the 39 periods that are there. I did increase them to 40 minutes this year, so I'm taking one step at a time, many steps. The fact that we have 9 periods, the high school has 8 periods, so I'm looking at trying to go to an 8-period, 45 minutes schedule similar to the high school. But when looking at that, the state says that each middle school has to fulfill these requirements to complete the middle school curriculum. So therefore, if you reduce the number of periods in a day, even though you limit the amount of instructional times, you do not allow time for a particular middle school students to access their full curriculum as a middle school student. So one way to look at it in terms of more interdisciplinary kind of work, team teaching, so those kind of approaches takes a little bit more time to put into place, but we are looking at those.
Other questions for Matt? Go ahead, Judy.
Okay, one of the things that Dr. Brown said was testing all entering 6th graders. I thought at one time there was a math exiting test for 5th graders. Is that anymore? No.
Screening?
Screening?
Talking about screening?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think the district has a universal screening tool or system in place for any grade level at this particular point. I think we're in the process now of looking at several tools, and hopefully by the end of this year we would, decide on one. Universal screening serves a purpose not just for the incoming 6th graders, but also for the students who are there. It helps you to assess them 3 times a year. As a result of assessing them 3 times a year, you kind of rest assured you don't lose students throughout the course of 9 months. It also allows for more accurate data. You can compare your data with what actually goes into the classroom as part of teaching the curriculum and the standards. So you have this screening tool that can match. It's almost like giving a state assessment, but not in the summative part of the long formal way of the state does. So you're matching the universal screening with what you're actually teaching them. So you see if there's gaps and see what kind of interventions, what kind of strategy you need to do to close the gaps. If the students is falling behind, and whether your particular lessons and your strategies or the units that you're teaching are actually or reaching or improving student achievement in those areas. So by having that, you have current data. You have a progress monitor, which you can monitor the success of students, and you can do follow-up plans. In addition, that particular information is carried on from the students from grade to grade. So therefore, the incoming 5th graders go to 6 to 7 to 8, and then when we get to Mr. Powers at high school, he has a better understanding and knowledge in terms of scheduling those students for various classes, distributes the FTE appropriately for the needs of those students as they enter high school.
Is Jason looking at that too?
Yes, we are. The whole district's looking at this, as a matter of fact. Yes.
Which leads to the next question, really, of Dr. Brown. We talked about this. We have senior schools within the district, which leads me to believe that we are in a district that needs improvement. So what we have to do at the district level is going to help Mac at his leadership at his level to do what he needs to do. So,
agreed.
So do you want to? Can you speak to that a little bit? Just
I will say
how we're supporting Mac and our other schools, frankly, across the district.
Yeah. A couple of things. One, I would start with we're only as good as a district as DeWitt Middle School and BJM. 2 schools that we know have some significant populations that we need to attend to. So we're only as good as those schools are. When they're excellent, we're excellent as a district.
And Ithaca High School.
And Ithaca High School, of course. And we'll talk about that later. But we've given principals that we've spoken to before the autonomy to make some innovative decisions, like we're hearing from Mr. Knight, you're going to hear from Mr. Powers in the coming weeks. Giving principals that autonomy, but the support from the central level to do some things that haven't been done before. I mean, Mr. Knight and I've talked about this team approach or the middle school concept. And in the past, because of the allocation of FTE at the central level, he wasn't even able to think like that. He's thinking like that now because he's been able to, he's been asked to think like that. Then our consistent approach to literacy and mathematics in general. Our continuous improvement plan for special education, district-wide initiatives that are going after consistency and a deep level of understanding and job embedded PD and approaches to the work. Those are things that are going to help the district. When speaking with elementary schools over the last 2 weeks as part of the mid-year review, they were all speaking to wanting to know what's going to happen at the middle school level. They all have questions at the elementary level. They have questions about what happens at the preschool level. When speaking to middle school teachers and high school teachers, they're wondering what's happening at the middle school. We have to have some consistency and some transparency about what happens, and some transition meetings and conversations about the young people who are transitioning. So I hope that gives you some sense of us having a district level conversation, but also allowing our building level leaders, who are the true instructional leaders, to make some decisions that benefit us all.
How many, oh, excuse me.
No, go ahead, Drew.
How many or how much more FTE are we talking about? What do you feel you need?
You're asking me, Dr. Brown.
Well,
Just say the right thing now.
I thought this was my golden opportunity, but since the budget has been discussed and voted on, yes, I got to be conservative with it. We're looking at 2.6.
And that's coming through a combination of enrollment and some of the approaches that we're going to do.
Rob, do I need to move that we accept or approve? Is it?
There's a resolution right in the agenda.
Oh, okay.
If you
I
could
move the resolution in the agenda.
I'll second.
Any other question? And it is resolved that the Board of Education approve the DeWitt Middle School Comprehensive Education Plan for the 2011-2012 academic year, just to make sure we're clear in the minutes. And we can still speak to it, but any other questions? We'll go ahead and vote. All in favor? That is everyone. As per the New York State regulations, we have to sign off on the plan. We've been presented the plan. We've reviewed it. Mac, you've done your job so far to come up with a plan. So we will sign off on it, and it goes back to the state. And then you continue to do your great work at DeWitt, and we appreciate your time tonight, Mac.
Right. Well, thank you. I didn't do this alone, so I just want to thank Mr. Powers from the high school and Ms. Garmers, who was also went through this particular process. But more importantly, the support from the central office, Dr. Myers, Ms. Evelyn, Mr. Moon, Ms. McHenry, and one of my colleagues here, Jillian Ryans, who is administrative intern for our special ed department at DeWitt Middle Schools, and our dedicated and loyal staff. As you probably saw from the IPEI presentations, we have some great teachers in the trenches. So I wouldn't be remiss if I didn't mention those folks as well. We sat around the table and made this happen. So
That's great,
thank you all.
We thank you. And Dr. Brown, I think we're ready for a continuing talk about the budget development for the...
We're still excited about the budget. At the last meeting. As you know, we mentioned that we will come back tonight to talk about human capital efforts and how this budget is supporting our human capital efforts. But before getting deep into the budget conversation, I wish to talk about something just a little bit different, going back to the last meeting. As I've said to you before, I think I see myself as a competitor. No longer am I able to compete on basketball courts or football fields because of age and injuries. But so I found myself challenging myself in different ways now. One of the ways I'm challenging myself is to make sure I answer every rhetorical question that Mr. Harris asks. And so he's not here tonight. So I wish he was here. At the last meeting, he asked one of his infamous rhetorical questions that I didn't get a chance to answer because someone else had a question, and then we got into another conversation. I thought it would be inappropriate to circle back to satisfy my competitive edge. But so
we just assumed that you didn't want to answer.
Oh no, I always want to answer because I'm a competitor now. But so it's been burning me for a couple of weeks, and I have it written down. I've written it down every day, and this is what he said that night in his Elvin Harris's way. Still waiting. I'm still waiting to see how all this work that we're doing is actually leading to one child, and you put a finger on one child achieving better in our schools. And what I wanted to get to it, but I'm glad I didn't get to that answer that night because I've had a couple of weeks to think about it and burn about it. And I know something I'm working on is to celebrate small wins and short-term successes. We're always thinking about big picture and excellence and what's going to happen in 2015 and what's going to happen in big picture, and working towards big picture and doing things in the near future and immediate future to get at the big picture. But we oftentimes forget to celebrate the short wins. So for him and for all of us, and I wish to share with you some answers to his rhetorical question last week. And the information I'm going to share with you is coming. It hasn't gone public yet because it's going to be part of the equity report card that will be released in the coming weeks. And these numbers aren't where we want them to be, but to answer that question about how I work, it's actually resulting in some student achievement results with individual young people in our organization in just a year. And typically I like to look at data after 2 or 3 years in this way, but because the question was asked, I want to look at it now so that we can celebrate some short-term wins. And I'm just pulling some information out of, which is a lot of information. As you know, the equity report card breaks down our affinity groups in many, many different ways. Dropout rate is one of the indication of achievement, we've decided, and is one thing that we've recognized having a significant achievement gap with. Dropout rate for minority students, and that includes Hispanic and Latino students and African American students, has gone from 22% to 12.5%, a significant decrease. Dropout rate for students with disabilities went from 22.6 in 2010 to 12.3 in 2011. Significant shifts in data in just a year. Another indicator of achievement for us, because we look at much more than student achievement, is also on a standardized assessment. Athletic participation and club participation. Right? We're talking about excellence as far as our co-curricular programs. Our percentage of students participating has increased significantly. And to be more specific, for our white students, the affinity group called white students, we went from 26.7% of those students participating in 2010 and 11 to 37.6% competing last year. Significant increases. For African American students, we went from 23.3% the year before to 34.2% in last year's scoreboard. Some significant increases in achievement. Absentee rates, something I know many of our principals are working on. There's school-wide initiatives to work on achievement. This is an indicator of engagement, which we've talked a lot about. If your engagement is true, authentic engagement, the absentee rates change. When saying that a year and a half ago, people struggled with that. I'm here to say after so much work on just engagement, our numbers are shifting. More specifically, the median days absent, and that's how we look at it. The median days absent for African American students who are also receiving free reduced lunch lunches went from 22 days absent per year to 10 days absent per year. Significant shifts. For white students, 11 days absent per year to 6. We're talking aggregate numbers and significant shifts in just a year and a half. So I know Mr. Harris is watching on TV, and I can't wait to see him in person. When asking those rhetorical questions, we're paying attention, and I appreciated it because, again, it made me think more in short term. And this is all data we're going to be rolling out over time. But the work that we're doing is making a difference. And when we talk about a budget that's investing in building a future for our community, this is what we're investing in right now. Oh, well. So one last data piece, the January 2012 BLA Regents exam. This, what we did last week, as soon as I got here, we were taking the Regents exam. We took them again this past year. We had our highest percent passing in 5 years. We are at a 91% pass rate for the January 2012 administration of the Regents exam. And in previous years, we've been at 85, 85, 87, and there was a 90% spike 1 year. Significant shifts in achievement. Some things that we should be celebrating. I mean, we have great leadership in our secondary school, we have great leadership in our elementary school. We've done much work here. We're reorganizing centrally. We're doing a lot of things that are happening, and some of this is making a huge, significant difference. So then it brings us back to tonight's conversation about the budget. And as we foreshadowed, we're going to frame the budget around our teaching learning framework, our TLC work, and our human capital, and how this budget is supporting those individual things. Tonight, we want to talk about why we're doing this, why we're framing it in this way. This teacher on special assignment, TOSA, you've heard that. We want to talk about that a little bit tonight, and how this budget is going to be utilizing that approach in the next year. But we're going to grow, and we're going to do some tweaking to it, but we're going to use this approach in the next year to address some needs. Instructional coaching. I want to outline for you what we're thinking about as far as instructional coaching. It's an educational buzzword right now. I put something in your Dropbox. I'm hoping you'll have time to read it in the coming weeks. That really speaks to instructional coaching, a model that's casting a lot of steam and producing some significant achievement results. And then Mr. Van Kuren and I are going to talk about the new hiring process and how the hiring process, which is supported by our budget, is actually helping support the work going forward. So let's talk about this teacher on special assignment. And when thought about teachers on special assignment roles and the framework for it, I've always thought about it as teachers supporting existing needs in the district, to be very simple. Here's some things that I know we have to do well next year in order to even think about an instructional coaching model. And what does that mean? There's some gaps and some infrastructure and some structures that need to be put in place as an organization, particularly in these areas, before we can really achieve the kind of successes that you're reading about as far as instructional coaching. Instructional coaching is about job-embedded professional development, and educators working with educators in classrooms and in situations where they can grow. It takes a structure and a consistent approach to teaching and learning across the district. It takes a consistent approach to all of these things to have instructional coaching work. So when looking at the teacher on special assignment, and Ms. Midler and the ITA, we have much work to do because these teacher on special assignment roles take an MOU, a memo of understanding, or a memo of agreement to do, and we're going to work on those things in the coming weeks and months. But we're looking for a teacher on special assignment model to support these areas which we've identified as significant weaknesses for us right now and things we need to improve, particularly language arts and mathematics. We have two major committees working hard right now in mathematics, one in mathematics and one in language arts. We're looking to evaluate programs, mathematic programs at the elementary level, and hopefully we'll select one that's going to be aligned, that's going to be research-based, it's going to be user-friendly, it's going to help teaching and learning and achievement for all students. Something that we're hearing our current program isn't doing. We have a committee that's doing that work. Once deciding on a program or an approach, there's a framework that needs to be worked on, there's some job-embedded PD, there's some structures that need to be put in place to even begin to implement it. We're hoping that our teacher on special assignment role will accommodate that need next year. Language arts. Mr. Harris spoke at the last meeting about sitting in on the literacy framework conversation. At the elementary level, we're having conversations, particularly at the elementary level, about a framework for teaching and learning around in language arts. What do we do during that 90-minute, if everyone has a 90-minute block of language arts time? What do we do during that time? What does the instruction look like? Those are structural conversations that we're having that are going to be led and supported through this teacher on special assignment role next year. Embedded in the budget already are some teacher on special assignment roles that are supporting language arts and mathematics in ways. Going forward, we're hoping to have, we've included in this year's budget 4 FTE, 4 individuals who are going to be working to do the kind of things we've spoken to with mathematics and literacy and build up those programs over the next year. Speech and language acquisition. In our continuous improvement plan for special education, we speak to this being a significant need for us. The data point that continues to stick in my mind is there's 45% of the young people that we identified as needing speech and language acquisition services, and giving them a label coming out of preschool going into kindergarten that could have been accommodated through Tier 1 intervention, which could have been in the form of a speech and language acquisition coach. That's a big number. And that's a significant shift if we were allowing the kind of coaching through a speech and language acquisition program, instructional coaching program to do. The budget contains 4 FTE, a combination of FTE coming from grant money, funded money, then a combination of monies coming from our general fund to support 4 FTE to support speech and language acquisition at the kindergarten and first grade level. These folks will be working with individual classroom teachers about how to teach those skills. It won't be a pull-out program. It'll be educators pushing into classrooms to work on those skills that we're seeing many of our young people coming out of preschool into kindergarten, or even our kindergartens getting identified as having those needs. Inclusion. You heard Mr. Knight speak to co-teaching and differentiated instruction. We have a significant need across the district here. When moving towards a more inclusive environment in our organization, we failed to provide the kind of job-embedded PD or support for helping educators understand how to do when you now have young people in your classrooms with the needs, which we're supported by. Best case scenario, we would have a few more FTE here, but right now we're including 1 FTE to focus at the secondary level, particularly at our Regents level, about how to provide a more inclusive classroom setting. Co-teaching, what does co-teaching look like? Working to figure out the scheduling. So there's so many structures as far as scheduling, what the structure should look like, the different models that we need to talk about. Now we have an FTE to support that work, and we're going to focus that person right now at the secondary level. Graduation rate. These numbers and these shifts that you're seeing right now aren't happening by accident. This year's budget included a graduation coach, and Mr. Powell is going to speak when he comes to speak to the board about the job responsibilities of a graduation coach, which we're calling this. an innovative approach to student services, one that we're seeing some significant results from already. This budget includes, yes, the graduation coach we had this year, but an additional graduation coach in hopes that we will split it up a 9-10 graduation coach and a 10-11-12 graduation coach that will also focus on the transitions, the middle school to high school transition, the high school to world of work transition, which I heard much from the folks at the Finger Lakes Independence Center today about our transition programs into the world of work. And then finally, technology. I could go on for hours about this one. We're finally getting to a place where we can actually have an instructional coach model that will support the actual implementation of digital connections of technology tools. We're about a year away from being where we want to be with our implementation of technology tools right now. Our current budget has one technology integration specialist. Next year's budget will have one technology integration specialist. In years to come, as we roll out this instructional coaching model and approach, all of those instructional coaches will understand technology and digital connections and how to implement or how to inform other educators about how to use those tools. So that's how we're planning to use this teacher on special assignment approach next year. And yes, that does include a few extra FTEs. It includes some FTEs that are currently in the budget. But our hopes are to get to a place where we can support an instructional coaching model. What I'm proposing to you tonight, well, I need the answers to a couple of questions. One, if you're in support of, I know we're going to talk more, if you're in support of our approach to teaching on special assignment role for next year. And the two, if you're in support of a design process, which I see, and I've talked to some others, we see as a 6-month design process to really talk about what instructional coaching would be, or should be. When looking at the documents that are out there and that are in your Dropbox about instructional coaching, having built one of those things take years to develop. And if you really have deep conversations with educators about what an instructional coaching model should do for your organization, it's going to take some time to have that conversation. But an organization should go into that conversation unless there's support for the board to do instructional coaching or for job-embedded professional development. I'm looking to hear from you tonight whether or not we can move forward with a 6-month long design process in which we'll bring educators to the table. And there's some educators in here now who've already begun the discussion about instructional coaching. What an instructional coaching model will look like. An instructional coaching model, if implemented in the way that it should be implemented, it may result in us not having some positions that we currently have. Some models, some positions that we have now that are specialists of sorts, similar to the technology specialists or the reading specialists that we have, oftentimes are rolled into an instructional coaching model, and they're called instructional coaches. And then they're seen as folks, one, that are non-supervisory. The instructional coaching model isn't a fancy way of getting more administrators. Let's put that out there right now. These are teacher leaders who work with other teachers, whether you're a master educator who's been doing this for a long time or an educator who's struggling. Instructional coaches works with all of those. Again, having a baseline of understanding of baseline structures that we're hoping to build out over the next year. An instructional coach is a content area expertise, a pedagogical expert, and also understands technology and ways to connect all three of those things. So technological, pedagogical, and content area expertise are the kind of folks we're looking for to roll into an instructional coaching model as we design it. And again, as I said, it's for all educators. Some more characteristics when you ask about what an instructional coach is: relationship builders. Relationship builders. One can't be a job-embedded professional developer unless you're able to build relationships with your colleagues, period. There are many master educators out there who can't really build relationships with colleagues, and those are the kind of folks who wouldn't necessarily fit into an instructional coaching model. Great communicators, obviously, instructional leaders, and generalists. Again, I have that word generalist there, and as we design this over the next year, we're going to go back and forth around this particular piece. Generalist or specialist. There's a train of thought at the secondary level. An instructional coach should be a content area expertise, or expert, a content area expert. There's some folks who say at the secondary level it should be a generalist. You don't necessarily have to be speak French or have taught a world language to be an instructional coach about how to teach foreign language. That's one train of thought. There's one train of thought that says in order to be a coach for your world language program, you must be a world language teacher and be fluent in 4 or 5 languages. Those are the conversations we'll have over the next 6 months as we build out our approach to instructional coaching. And then in general, speaking to the elementary level, there are some folks who say in order to coach preschool or kindergarten, you must be an expert at preschool or kindergarten instruction or curriculum, while there's others who said if you're an elementary generalist and you understand teaching and learning across grade levels and vertically, you can be that kind of instructional coach. So I'm not making any determinations tonight. The research is out there, the literature is out there, the models all over the country. I'm hoping that you will give us the okay to engage in that conversation over the coming months and years. And maybe at this time next year, we're rolling out a budget request. It will include an instructional coaching model. So tonight, the teacher on special assignment piece that we feel is going to be, it is critical to put some structures in place and to support educators as we move the work forward. And then to be thinking and beginning the conversation, which I anticipate us having multiple work sessions to talk about instructional coaching and bringing instructional coaching type folks to the table to talk about what that looks like. And Mr. Vancouver is going to talk about the hiring process, but I want to take a break here and just talk about what we've talked about, what we've shared already, and your thoughts and reactions to it. Yes, ma'am.
I'm familiar with TOSA teachers. Can you see them becoming instructional coaches? I mean, are we talking two distinct teachers?
Right, and we're being very distinct right now because what we see the role being next year will be different from an instructional coach going forward, particularly around the work. And I'll have two experts who have actually come to the table now, because you probably can speak to it as well as I can, or better than I can, as far as the difference between a role that's more of a teacher on special assignment and the role that's more of an instructional coach. Lynn, would you want to wish to speak to this one?
We'll go sit together.
Yeah. Go, come on.
Come on up. And Chris, do you want to ask a question right now?
TOSA, I was curious, managing results and expectations, because since this is a partnership, but we're expecting results, how much influence do they have to drive this forward?
Well, I think we might answer that when we talk about the difference of the two, in that next year the TOSAs are very clearly going to be in place to, as Dr. Brown says, set up the structures that we're developing this year. I mean, Lynn and I can speak to really specifically the elementary literacy framework. And then, so this year, a team of teachers and community members and board members are all looking at frameworks. We're developing an Ithaca literacy framework. Next year, that needs to get out into the buildings. Principals need to understand it. Board members need to understand it. You know, so there's a lot of just getting it out there work and understanding. Then the instructional coaches will have something to talk about. I mean, they'll have many other things to talk about. That's one thing they'll have to talk about. So that's how they're very different. It's a, you know, the instructional coaches are job embedded, whereas next year the TOSAs will have some specific things to get into the schools. So
yeah,
one piece.
Yeah, and one way I could describe the kind of the difference is by giving an example, because right now as a TOSA and the primary literacy staff developer, I kind of try to operate as a hybrid between the two, and oftentimes that's where I run into the challenge. So, for example, working with a first grade teacher at BJM, and we were working on how to do small group literacy instruction during her language block. And so I was going in and I did some co-teaching or some model teaching. So I actually led a small group of students in her class around how to blend sounds together in a word and chunk them while she observed. The next day I went back in and modeled the same lesson, and we met afterwards and talked about it, and I talked through my thinking process, how I went about planning it, why I focused on those specific skills. The next day I went back in and she taught the lesson and I watched, and then we talked about it afterwards. And we continued on this over a couple of weeks, working with these small groups of students until the teacher felt really comfortable and confident about making those instructional decisions by herself and leading the lessons. Now, an instructional coach would do that every day with lots of teachers from the same building. As a TOSA that's also moving forward kind of this more broad-based district level work, where it's a lot about communication and getting it out to a whole bunch of different people, my schedule gets pulled, so then I'm focused on kind of this district work, and I don't have time to get back and have those ongoing reflective conversations, and it kind of like puts the brakes on. So I felt like we were making a lot of progress, that I haven't been able to get back to that classroom or that school for a month now. So it's like, that stopped. So does that help clarify the difference?
But you're asking about accountability next year?
Well, accountability, I understand this is it's a process. So we're not there yet, but so we're talking about the framework, the structure, putting it together with the curriculum and then rolling it out. So we roll it out, and you're working with me in my classroom, and I really don't believe what you're telling me, because I've been doing this for 15 years, and, you know, so then what?
Well, that's where the instructional coaches will come in. So next year, we roll it out, we build understanding and commitment from at least the educational leaders in the buildings. You know, so we work with
So they're your muscle.
I don't you know what, they are the
early adopters.
Yeah, they're the early adopters. That then next year, in 2 years, the instructional coaches, they are the supporters of the instructional coaches. I don't like to say muscle, but they are the evaluative people, and so we want to be clear.
So 3-4 year plan?
We're thinking about it too. And if I can go back, the instructional coach, and you use the word evaluative. It's evaluative in one sense, but in many senses it's not evaluative. We got to be clear that the instructional coach isn't an administrative, like quality administrator going into. That relationship is going to be key. What will happen as we roll out the structures next year, there are going to be some educators who don't wish to jump on board immediately. That's instructional leadership at the building level from the principal to make sure we have consistency. The principal may lean on an instructional coach to use that relationship building and communication skills. Like these math educators here, they can get into any classroom in the district right now and have credibility. The instructional coaches in the next 2 years are going to be just like that. So when that educator is a little hesitant and not truly understanding how the new math series is going to increase achievement because they love the old one, a good instructional coach will walk in and say, this is how it's better, and work with me, versus the principal coming in and being the evaluator.
Right. So while the principal is going to be the evaluator, and that's what I meant, they're going to be a more informed evaluator through the work that we do next year, and we also are going to begin to make inroads with the teachers. But then the instructional coaches will be able to really, in a collegial way, help teachers move forward without being an evaluator. And that is, you know, the research is very strong across the country that moving teachers forward through evaluation is not as strong as moving teachers forward through collegial coaching.
And differentiated coaching, so that, you know, once this framework is rolled out and there's common understanding, differentiating the support that instructional coaches are able to give based on where teachers' different needs are, because teachers are going to be at all different levels along the continuum about how they understand these frameworks, how they understand a new math program, what areas they might need or want further development, and that's what instructional coach can do, really differentiate, so it's not a one-size-fits-all professional development program.
And I think that may be a piece of what the TOSAs do next year in terms of rollout. They're going to be able to inform the instructional coaching process, not necessarily that they will become instructional coaches, but in a rollout of a new math program, they'll be able to say, well, here's where we see areas of differentiated need for instructional coaches. In the elementary literacy framework, you know, as TOSAs will be able to look at, you know, what's going on with the, you know, rolling out and saying, so that informs the work of a different position the next year.
So my question is a logistical, structural question. I read the Spokane document. I understand the goals and the staff development, teacher development aspect of this. My question, and maybe I'm just missing something because I'm not wearing my bifocals or whatever, but who are the instructional coaches? Are they teachers? Are they administrators? Are they teachers who are also teaching? Are they teachers who aren't teaching? Where do they fit into the big scheme of things? Where do they fit into the staffing plan? And how many, I mean, because I assume we're not going to cut teacher positions to create instructional coaches. So how many more people is that?
Not to talk about the budget or anything, but yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I'm trying to get a sense of what...
You may be a great person to be on the design team, because every question you ask, except for one, is one that would have to be answered as part of the design process. The one piece that we will answer going into this is that they aren't administrators. And we're going to be clear about that. These are teacher leaders that are going to... Other models that have worked well are instructional coaches who spend 3 years in the role and then go back into the classroom. And that's a requirement as far as being an instructional coach. Coming from a model that did that, some of our best teachers did the instructional coaching and went back into the classroom, and their data shows that they're better teachers, and their qualitative data and survey results show that they love teaching more. So that's something that we'll decide. But the one piece that we know going in is that it's not an administrative role, and other programs, the FTE, the current FTE has been reallocated or reimagined to support this model. It wouldn't be additional FTE. We wouldn't ask for 40 FTE to be instructional coaches and still do the same thing we've always done. We would have to look at all of our support staff and figure out which support staff is involved in with this model and which ones aren't.
In this budget, well, in this budget, you are asking for
the teacher on special assignment position.
We're looking at the TOSAs.
Yeah.
You've mentioned that there's a reallocation of FTE, but are you looking at adding FTE? Are we looking at adding to the workforce to do this year?
It's more of a reallocation of existing FTE. And again, you'll hear more from Mr. Powers as there'll be some FTE reductions in order to do some things with instructional coaching and TOSAs. And we've done similar things with the overall budget there as well.
Right, and just to be clear, we put out that budget number, that $107,812,000 and change.
Yeah.
So that within that budget number that we put out, and that is the number that is approved by the public. That's the number we take to referendum. So we're talking about, what is really, how is the community, telling the community, how are we looking to spend those dollars over this next year? And Judy, you had a question.
I actually have two. One of the concerns I've heard about TOSAs and about instructional coaching is that you take the best teachers out of the classroom. And kids are not exposed, quote, to the best teachers. I think that in some ways is true. The other, and I was interested, is an instructional coach going to be one per building? Or how are you going to?
Another question we would have to answer as we go through the process, and that will depend largely upon the resources too. Many models have started with we want at least 1 or 2 in every building, and that has resource implications. So again, if given the go-ahead from the board tonight, we'll have a conversation about what would be the best model for us. But to speak to your first concern about master teachers coming out of classrooms, that is true. Master educators will be going into instructional coaching roles. As an organization going after excellence, we must ensure that every classroom has a master teacher in it. So the fact that we're saying that speaks to the deficiencies we have as an organization. The one piece that has been found to increase the likelihood that you're going to have a master teacher in every classroom is instructional coaching. There aren't many silver bullets out there in education, but if we're looking to have a master educator in front of every child, instructional coaching has been the way to get there and quickly. We've tried everything else for decades. We finally have something that's actually working, because now you have a master educator working with other educators that may not be where they need to be in efforts to help them achieve.
And I think that speaks to, you said TOSAs and instructional coaches pull the best teachers away from kids. I think TOSAs in the long term can, and Lynn spoke to how she was in front of students for a while, but then being a TOSA, she had to pull back because she has 8 schools to deal with and also district-wide responsibilities. Instructional coaches, yes, they do not have a classroom anymore, but they're still in the building or buildings, depending on the structure, and they are still in front of students and building another master teacher very specifically. So it does sort of pull them away from 20 to 22 children of theirs.
But the likelihood is that they're
in more room.
They're reaching more children every day than they were before.
Which is why it's been so successful.
And I think the master teacher, as an instructional coach, you being in collaboration with teachers in the classroom every day makes you an even stronger teacher. So every collaboration, no matter what type of teacher I'm with, I become a better teacher for that.
My own, still.
Go ahead. Let her hug you.
My final concern is that we don't do this half-heartedly. If we need instructional coaches, then she should have been in that room, 10, 12, 20 times. It does no good to do it piecemeal. So,
I appreciated the Spokane piece that you put in the Dropbox, and I don't know how closely you think you may want to follow that. Mostly you folks have looked at that. You mentioned Pat might want to be on the committee. That's one of the comments I had about the Spokane model. No board members were on the committee, and no parents were on the committee. I found that interesting that they had excluded them, but they had 2 presidents of the teachers union. I wonder how they did that. Must be an interesting teachers union.
2 presidents?
You have 2 people listed as the president of the Spokane Education Association.
We have 1.
I found that interesting. But anyway, there were no parents, there were no board members. I hope we'd look at it differently. And I think when you look at the, I read it, and the one thing I comment on is on the Spokane piece, you get to the role of the instructional coaching model. Walk on water was only 3rd on the list. It's 9 different roles. I think I'd be more focused, would be my advice.
You should know that our Dropbox of instructional coaching is much larger, and so that is just one as an example.
Okay.
We have lots of models and lots of research.
I just looked at this one, I said, wow, 9 roles.
My eyes glazed over after a while.
Yeah, we didn't choose it as the best, we chose it as an example.
An example of ones that are out there.
I didn't want to overwhelm.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't know whether you were, if you were focused on.
But I think those roles, also those varying roles, speak to the differentiation. So you're going to wear kind of a different role or a different hat as an instructional coach, depending on how you're working with different teachers or different teams of teachers.
Yeah, no.
But
I mean, just to give you an example, it labeled one of the roles for the coach to be working with the stakeholders, and it didn't mention it as a role for the principal, which struck me as a very odd division of the roles. So I wanted to.
They've been allowing lessons learned from different models.
No, I suspect that's the case. I was looking at it, and since that's the one we read.
Right, and we appreciate that Dr. Brown is asking for time as a design team, to see what's there.
So I'm looking at this instructional coaching model, and I'm trying to focus on this, but then it leads me to all the other things that we're talking about. There must be some interplay with the PLC idea, in that somehow there's a connection there, and that the work done here. But then also there's this data piece that I guess hasn't been spoken to. Maybe it's assumed or something, but the sense is there's going to be a portion of teachers who say, hey, Liddy, come into my class. And then there's a portion of teachers who say, hey, Liddy, never come into my class, stay out. And is it the PLC data conversations, or your review as an instructional coach of the data that says, hey, this particular teacher needs coaching? I mean, how are you informed? Is it kind of a request that, like...
Well, I think I'm going to sort of fall back to what Dr. Brown says. It's part of the design. I think one of the keys is to have everyone involved in some way, because otherwise it is, I don't want Liddy coming in, or I look like I'm deficient in some way. So how do we develop a program where everyone is a part of the coaching process in some way? And one way to get to that, and I think a very effective way, is to base a lot of the, not a lot, a good portion of the instructional coach's time through the PLCs, because it's not whether you're a good or bad teacher. I'm coming to 2nd grade, and we're going to discuss data, and we're going to look at where we need to move forward. And for you, it may look different than another 2nd grade teacher, based on data, based on need. But there's always conversations with the instructional coach that every teacher has.
And I would add 2 things that will come out of our design process. One, how does one receive instructional coaching? How do we determine whether or not a teacher received that coaching? That's a question that in the former district we didn't answer, and it was a lesson learned, let's just say, because that question continued to come up, and it caused controversies and confusion. We'll answer that question. How does one determine that? And the second question...
Hey, wait, could I say, how does one determine that in a way that does not put any particular teacher on blast? I mean, is it a...
Yeah.
And do we want a system that doesn't put teachers on blast as far as any weakness? Is that the...
Yeah, and we have multiple systems right now. To use the term putting teachers on blast, we have ways to do that. I mean, we have data systems, we have administrators are doing some things already to understand where there are weaknesses in their particular school or across the organization. We have ways to do that right now. This is a different model. And answering that question going into it will help alleviate some concerns and also be very clear and focused to the folks who are going to be instructional coaches. Again, the best models get at every educator, period. And there's some questions we'll answer going through the process that will allow that to happen without being in an evaluative way or in a way that causes...
No, I'm glad
yeah.
Because I totally misunderstood this, and
yeah.
I'm glad that it's being looked at in that way and that it will touch everyone.
And the second piece that we will have an answer to before we roll something out is how do we measure whether or not it's been successful. Another district, we went into it because we knew it was the best thing. We had additional resources at the time, so we did it. And off the time when we had additional resources, you didn't put that measurement indicator in first. We will have how will we know if our job embedded PD efforts are increasing student achievement? And we'll be able to be very specific about how this model's informing it. So we'll answer those questions. Again, I'm happy the board, this board I should have known would have done it, and took the time to read the example. We have about 55 other examples, and now I'm going to flood your boxes with. Now, do you want to read them? You got to come with your iPhone. So there's so much information about this.
I thought I had to read this before the meeting, so you know.
So we will.
I just do what I'm told.
It'll be great.
Dr. Brown, you asked something of the board tonight, but you know, as of right now, you're asking us to approve 4 TOSAs, correct? Or give...
that are currently embedded in the budget.
They're currently embedded in the budget. But I'm hearing that resources need to be dedicated to the instructional coaching model. But you're not, no one's really quite sure what this is going to look at.
It's not right now.
No, I mean, but this, sorry, Dr. Brown, but this is, if we go down this road, then the board, the community has to be aware that there may be resources needed in order to implement this model.
Agreed. There will be. I wouldn't go so far as to say additional resources, but allowing us the opportunity to look at our current resources first. And if there's a need for additional resources, we will come to the board and act for those. But that will come out of the design process. That will occur.
But as of right now, you're looking at using the wealth of resources that we have from this community and support in perhaps a different way. That's what we talk about a lot. You know, we have many resources. How will we use them most effectively for the children of this community? So it may be more FTE, it may be other investments, but as of right now, we're looking at using what we have.
And very specifically to get at those things I showed earlier, graduation rate, speech and language acquisition, things that we need our data to shift with. I'm asking the community and the board to support us moving forward next year with some structures that will help us put some things in place to move that those numbers.
And you were telling us that it will take about 6 months to do a plan for...
To do it thoughtfully, yes. I anticipate going into the budget season next year that we'll be at a place where we can offer recommendations. A recommendation that we would all be informed by. If having the Board of Education work sessions, other conversations that speak to instructional coaching and rolling up our sleeves and getting dirty about it. I think this time next year we're going to all know what we want to do.
So you answered my question. I'm terribly relieved to realize that I asked a question that doesn't have an answer yet, so I haven't missed something, and that always makes me feel better. So basically, we've always had teachers on special assignment in the budget, and you're proposing that those same resources be directed in a specific way this year, and that this is the vision that you would like to go in, and you want to gauge as to whether we're going to shoot it down after you do a lot of work, or
that's a good way of putting it. Yes,
Thank you, Pat. I was trying to get it.
You're sitting in the seat, so I think you're taking this role. Yes, to your 2 or 3 questions. Yeah, I understand.
So I personally am good with this direction, with what I've seen tonight, as letting you run with that.
You asked if we should study this in a rational way before we implement it?
A thoughtful way.
Yes, a thoughtful way.
In a thoughtful way.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
How could you, anybody opposed to that?
I don't know. Well, that's what we're thinking. Right?
Do I need a motion? Approve?
Just want
Yeah, we
to
just, the motion will be approving the budget, because approving the budget will be supporting this model.
Again, just to make it clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's great, and I applaud us for using the great resources that we have internally, as far as our great teachers who are in the trenches and know this work to improve us all. I mean, that's an outstanding approach.
Thank you.
We're not bringing in outside consultants to try and address some of the stuff we're trying to get better at. We're actually saying, no, you guys are here doing the work. You know better than anyone. Let's do it together and move it forward. So,
And I would hope that we can move eventually to use language that doesn't refer to a classroom as a trench with how about a great place to learn? That's
Thank you. Can we shift down to the hiring process? Or you have other stuff?
You want to take 5?
Yeah, because they all have
I was going to say, let's let our government students go. Let's sign they'll finish their homework.
Our government students can go home and study.
So a quick break.
A quick break, so we'll do a shift and keep going. That'd be great. 5 minutes, 5 minutes. started. And we're starting.
Yeah, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Van Kuren, who wishes to go through our revamped hiring process and how it's going to support our human capital efforts going forward.
And any other conversations going on in the room can end, and Bob, you can speak.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. First of all, I wanted to take just a moment before we get into the process to thank some people. Community members, Teachers Association, Principals Association, but most of all the Board of Education and Sean and Eldred, who couldn't be here tonight. Thank you for listening and for investigating the data, and most of all, and most importantly, thank you for believing me when I said, and others said, having one person in charge of the human capital of a $100 million corporation with 1,250 employees spread out over 14 areas and collaborations with 5 unions was more than one person could do well consistently. And what had suffered for a number of years, I think, because of that dynamic was the recruitment and hiring process, which I've said before and will continue to say, if we do this right, and we do it consistently well for 3 to 5 years, it'll be on, right, Dr. Brown? Is that what you're saying? It'll be on.
It'll be on.
I don't know what that means exactly, but I think it means things will be really, really good.
It'll be better.
It'll be better. So I'm looking forward to it. The first slide is entitled "The Hiring Process." Now we're on there. Yeah. But it really should be, we forgot to put in there, a continuous improvement process, continuous improvement hiring process. Nothing's written in stone. And we're going to continue to collaborate with our stakeholders and our unions and approach this with humility and transparency. So if things need to change as we move forward, if other people have better ways of doing things, we will listen and make appropriate changes. The second slide is, Brad, you're going to like this slide when it comes to full view. But that number's too low. I didn't want to scare anyone. We had been using $1 million investment per teacher over a career. It really is, as Brad has said on a number of occasions, when you include, near a 30-year career, you include the professional development that goes into a teacher. It's a $2 million investment. And we hired last year roughly 50 teachers, and if you just take their salary and benefits alone, it's nearly a $3 million investment that we're making. We're purchasing human capital in the amount of $3 million every year, and that'll likely go up as the economy starts to reach its way back to productivity. So this is an important topic. As you all know, 70% roughly of the budget of our $100 million is human capital related. So hiring folks and putting the right people in the right places will pay off. And I dare say you've seen that already start to pay off with some of the principal recruitments that we were able to do and appointments, teachers doing excellent work in the classroom. It will really pay off. So what does it look like, the investment we need? Oh, I forgot this slide. So we're making a $2 million investment per teacher, and we have spent in the past roughly 2 hours making that investment. And it hasn't been the most productive 2 hours. It's the screening process has been cumbersome. People at the end of an 8-hour day looking through your 100th application are tired and cranky, and probably the 100th application didn't get the same consideration as the first application. So we really set forth to revamp this system to make the 2 hours expand into a more meaningful amount of time, but more importantly, I think, is to make the time that we do invest more productive. And Dr. Brown, you can probably skip right to the next slide, because we'll capture all this in the next slide. These are some of the things we've been doing, but I think this slide captures it better, and I can just work right through it. The posting and advertising, really there should be another slide there, and I foreshadowed it in exec session tonight, job descriptions. I hope to revamp the job descriptions starting
with superintendents and the instructional leadership team as we move forward, principals, associate principals, teachers in the classroom, to really work off from a model of vision of what excellence in the classroom will be, and less of the cumbersome, what is somebody supposed to do day in and day out. The job descriptions should really be the vision, and we should find the people that fit that vision. Once we do that, we'll have a more active posting and advertising process, the high-value markets. Dr. James, who was able to be here for the whole meeting tonight, she's really taken on the recruitment and retention process very seriously. She's made more contacts with colleges and universities. In fact, she left early tonight to go to a recruitment trip out of town. She's made contact with every teacher, I dare say every teacher, teaching assistant, and teacher aide who represents diversity in our district, to start trying to develop a Grow Your Own program again. So the high value markets are places where we're going to get the most bang for our dollar in terms of recruiting the highest quality people, with also the Board of Education's goal of diversifying the workforce in mind. The online application system, one of the biggest complaints we had from the public as well as people within the community, within the district, was the online application process that we had been using. It was a government-run process, and they essentially told us the way we were going to do it, rather than the private sector market, which we've switched to recently, which says, how would you like it done? So we have much more control of what we send out to applicants to send to us. And by the way, it's cheaper than the government-run program. So we got, I don't know how that happened, but it's web interactivity. The applicants themselves will be able to leave links for us to click on, and they can download videos of themselves teaching or doing other activities. We're able to interactively send them questions to answer during the application phase, so that the screeners have more information and more in-depth information about the applicants as we move forward. And I forgot to mention, interrupt anytime. Don't let me babble on. If you have a question, just jump in. So the application process itself is going to be much more interactive and controlled by the district, and involve screening tools within the system that will allow us to do much more reporting, data reporting out as to who's applying. Jay?
What do you mean by web interactive?
Again, for instance, as we move into a more technologically advanced system, teachers who are graduating now typically have videos of themselves in their student teaching capacity, student teaching role. In fact, it's a requirement to send to the state ed in terms of certification. So they can leave us a link on our application system that we can click on, and it'll go to that video. So as we're screening and we want to see them in action, we can do that.
So you I got it. And does web interactive also mean, I don't think it means any sort of web interviewing or Skyping? Or
we've talked about those type of things depending on the applicant and where they might be in the country. So it can be Skyping.
And that may be part of more of the interview process or the initial screening process we can Skype at any point. It may not be part of the application. One thing that Bob did mention is we can upload videos of ourselves, and me or Bob or someone else, an educator, speaking to what we look for in our applicant, and they can click on a link within the application process to get the information.
And did required answer, what does that mean?
And what I heard, Bob, is that we had many of our applications that were going through the screening process with some missing answers to some key questions, particularly the diversity questions. This process won't allow for applications to be submitted until all questions have been answered. A huge shift. There were many applications, I've looked at some of them that were good, but they were missing one question. And the screening committees, because of the protocol, were kicking those applications out. Now, and they may have missed those questions because of the system, they may have forgotten, but no longer will that be something that
And the old government system didn't allow us the capacity to even have the questions. So what we had to do was direct applicants to our website to answer those questions. And then it took, personnel time to track them down if they didn't have a question. Oftentimes the timing was just such that the application closed and they didn't have the answers done.
So I'm a little embarrassed to ask this question, but
go ahead anyway.
What the hell, right?
Yeah.
Who are we trying to hire? I've gone through a hiring process as a law student, and it was based on your credentials, journals, grades, your kind of pedigree things. Is it you went to this high-ranked school, you had this is what your transcript looked like? We ask you these questions, you give the right, who is this magic person that we're trying to get to come work here? Or do we just want people with capacity and then we develop them internally? Or, is it a program? Do we say, oh, you come from Portland, you're the cat's meat? What are we doing here?
Part of the reason, and I've grown to actually endorse this process, and part of the reason I think we do it differently in Ithaca gets at the answer. The screening process involves stakeholders from the community, parent-teacher organizations, teachers, principals, other union groups, central office personnel, and quite frankly, everyone, to be honest with you, is looking for different things. Some of the principals look primarily for experience. They want a teacher who's been tenured because that means something to a principal. It means you're not breaking someone in necessarily. These are large generalities that I'm talking about right now. Folks from the community might be looking for something else. Central office might be looking for a more holistic college, what you did and where you did your student teaching, that type of thing, some experience. So,
who should we be looking for? I know every group has their preference. Who should we be looking for?
One of the things we've developed with Dr. Brown's request is a rubric, and it's built off the Danielson model, quite frankly, which is what our APPR model was built off of. And kudos to Susan and Liddy and Lee and
Lana
and Larry, who sat with Dr. James for about a 25-hour day, and two 25-hour days, and worked through a rubric which really identifies those things that we're looking for in good teaching with the APPR.
We're going to see that.
Yeah, we'll get it. They just did it last week.
If I may comment, it's still being changed and edited. It was an initial draft and we worked from that.
Is it good?
It's getting to be excellent. It's not there yet.
Well, it's good. You're going to get it to excellent.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important things is that there were different stakeholders making that rubric. Yeah. Because what Bob's saying is people want different things, and so that we're all sitting at a table saying, well, this is important, well, this is important. And so that rubric takes into account all those things, and so it's not just tenured teachers. It is also teachers with potential. So we're making a rubric that speaks to the different stakeholders, but is consistent no matter sort of who's looking at it.
And we're challenging those different stakeholders when they say, I want tenure. Do you tell the principals the tenure means nothing?
I think we're saying, so what is the components of tenured that you're looking for? So does it have to be a tenured? So what does a tenured teacher have that we want? And so could that be a teacher with great potential but hasn't actually been tenured?
How do you look at the person who's coming straight out of school in a teacher prep program, who has great potential but not the wisdom of the classroom and experience, versus someone who's been out in the field and has a lot of experience but may not have any idea of the Common Core standards or the different forms of assessment or the changes. So in the rubric, there are different levels, and it demonstrates what you have as evidence that shows that they have it, or evidence of having introduced, or possibilities. You don't want to screen out, have a screening instrument that eliminates everybody who's never taught before, because the next greatest teacher in the world could be walking through our door.
Bob, can I give a quick answer to stuff? He asked a great question. I don't know if we've given him a simple answer. The answer is we don't know. You asked a question about what is it that we're looking for. Until now, we haven't tried to decide that. We're at a point where we're very close to having to give to you what we see as a master teacher and a master administrator. It's taken us about 6 months or a year now, and I spoke about this last year when coming on board, that human capital was about us establishing what it is that we wanted in our educators, and then going out and getting it, and then supporting them. We're at the place where we are trying to establish what it is we want, and this takes some time. This process tonight is about going out and getting those folks and bringing them in, and what you heard earlier was how do we support them once they're here. So the answer is we don't know yet, but we're getting closer to it.
But I think it's important to remember that it's not a checklist, it's a rubric, because there isn't one. We're not going to find a checklist, and if you have 90% of them, you get in. A rubric, by its very nature, has across and down, and so there isn't one, but there is a rubric within which we're going to work.
And so the question behind the secondary question, which is, we're challenging people, right? And that's why it takes a 25-hour day to get through half of a rubric, because those conversations are happening, and they're happening respectfully, but they're intense conversations that are happening.
So now we're at the screening process.
We're at the screening process. So the screening, I think that's the second thing that I heard when I came, and it took a while to figure out how we're going to do it better, is these 8 to 10-hour days where people sit in a crowded room and go through paper applications. And, quite frankly, technology was the answer to this, and we're able to secure a site so that people can come in with a password, hop into the site, and screen from the comfort of their own home at times that are appropriate for them. So they could screen at 3 o'clock in the morning if that's what they want to do. So there'll be a 2-week window or a week window depending on the case. Within that window, they go in, they screen, they fill out the rubric, and at least for the time being, we're going to all meet again and go over the rubric. It won't be just simply you send in the rubric and the computer spits out the winner. We'll come back together and talk about things. The consistent team approach, one of the things we're going to do for the screening, for all of these phases, quite frankly, is train people. There's never been training. There's never been inter-rater reliability. There's never really been sufficient training on board goals, on what is, how to use the rubric, that type of thing. So we're hoping for stakeholders to give us a consistent team that we can train and work with and swap out people on a rotating yearly basis. Interviewing, again, training is important there. The interviewing process, one of the things that we heard from a number of sources is that the interview process wasn't rigorous enough. And when what we boiled that down to is people want to see teachers teach as part of the process. They don't necessarily want to see them interview. They want to see them teach. So part of the interview process now will be most likely presenting some sort of teaching mechanism to the interview team, but also when they narrow it down to the final 1, 2, or 3 teacher applicants, those applicants will go into a classroom with children.
How unusual is that?
I don't know how unusual. I wasn't able to find a lot of data. I know some people do it, some don't.
Some progressive places are doing it, but it's rather unique.
So they'll go in, they'll be with kids, with hopefully a master teacher and the principal of the building, and they'll be evaluated based on that teaching assignment. So that's some rigor we put in there. Background investigations, we haven't reached this phase yet, but there'll be a rubric for the background investigation, and it'll be more extensive than we currently use. And the additional sources, we're not just going to simply call the 3 references that that the applicant put on. We're going to want to find out other people, whether it's looking at their application and figuring out where they work, calling principals from those buildings rather than just the references they put on.
And while I speak to social networking, I mean, I heard it over here, we do check social networking sites to learn more information about potential candidates.
It's pretty standard
That's standard.
across all businesses.
Yeah.
And it may as well be here as well.
And again, this is not hopefully, this will end in a transparent, auditable review process. That hopefully we will never be in a position again where our trust with the various stakeholder groups, both internal and external, is at a point it's low. And I want to keep that at a high point. So a transparent process is essential.
Bob, Jay just asked, you're going to have a HR audit committee? In so many words.
In terms of a
What does that mean? What's the little dot thing here?
What little dot?
Audit committee.
A group of folks will be looking at this process, determine if we follow these steps as we say we will. So not a HR committee, not a board committee, it's just a group of folks that Mr. Van Kuren's going to pull together to independently look at what we've done.
As I see the audit
advisory
committee or advisory committee, they'll also begin to look at the data to show that what we're doing here is resulting in hopefully the recruitment and retention of the best educators. So this hopefully, I keep saying hopefully, this will be data driven.
Right, to make the point, Bob, I mean, we make $2 million decisions every time we hire. $75 million of our annual budget goes to human resources, human capital. So it may be useful to us if we actually had a process to manage all that. So, right, go ahead. Judy, then Jay.
How long a process do you see this as?
Well, two answers. One, and I'm not being glib, this is a continuous process, right? This will never be done. We will always find...
Did you? Didn't you mean the hiring process?
Yeah.
Oh, from start to finish.
Yeah. That was my question too.
I'm not quite rapidly. I mean,
from advertising to hire.
Longer? How about longer? Shorter than what you're doing now?
Should be shorter. Are
they going to bring them in? They're going to bring them in to teach?
I'm going to say more efficient than what we do now.
Well, we're also looking to do this process throughout the year. We've identified some of the best candidates who are in teacher prep programs or on the market in August or September. There's no reason why we can't have this committee look at those folks then and vet them through a process. We haven't talked about early contracts or offering contracts before we have an opening, but that's something I hope we talk about in the future. But we can definitely identify some of the best people, have them get to most of this process until the hire place, and then if an opening comes up mid-year, which happens often, or at the end of through the budget process, we can offer a position. So it's going to happen throughout the year.
Can I follow up on that idea?
Yeah.
We've seen master teachers in other organizations, and this seems like this is kind of the basic recruiting tool of the natural way, but what about this idea of knowing that, you know, a teacher in Elmira, you know, has an outstanding program, you know, from your travels around, and can we recruit that teacher? I mean, is there a...
Yeah, I mean, you can put that under high value markets. That's something I didn't highlight here, but it's something that we do quite regularly.
But he's getting at something though. What he's speaking to is an intended consequence of this process. I won't go out and say we're actively recruiting educators from other districts because that would get me in hot water. But this process lends itself to that, especially as people see our work and they're engaged by our work. They're going to want to be a part of the organization. So they may identify us in the fall and think about what it would look like for my family to be in Ithaca. And going through a process like this that's starting in August, that gives them a chance to check us out, us to check them out. So it's an intended consequence, but I wouldn't go so far as to say we're actively recruiting.
So there's a culture of non-recruiting and education.
We'd like to. We've had teachers stolen from us at the
I was
last
going to
minute.
say,
Yeah,
I would rather say it's not an explicit process.
Yeah.
We get teachers recruited to all the time.
So you think you can set up, if I understand correctly, some sort of system that isn't as reactionary as we are now, that we lose a teacher, we begin the process, and we're always, you know, in the summers and all. I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful? But it just seems like I'm not really seeing how you're going to get past that.
The easiest way to see it is in the elementary realm, because we know, looking at the data from the history of the last 10 years, we're always going to hire probably close to 10 elementary teachers per year. So why wait till the last minute, right? We know we're going to hire, and let's continue to do it. Let's offer them contracts early, and you know, you maybe don't offer 10 contracts. Maybe you take a risk and you offer 5. Now, could there be a possibility that no teacher retires and we're stuck with 5 contracts? Yeah, but the history has shown that's a pretty good bet. I'll take that bet.
And there'll be 5 outstanding educators.
Right. So we don't lose them through.
But that's something you could have been doing. You didn't. If you've had that historical data, what's changed?
Well, we began to look at the whole process differently, and you know, a light bulb went on, and you said, you know, how stupid were we to not do that?
And we talked about diversifying our...
We put another FTE in his office so we had time to think.
We talked about diversifying our staff. This is how you do it. The continual process about hiring. I mean, we know there are some minority candidates, 1 or 2 in the best teaching ed programs in the country. Those folks are getting early contracts in Atlanta, Baltimore City, you name it, in September or October. Why are we missing out? So, I mean, if we really are serious about getting having African American teachers at the high school, there are ways to go about that can be supported by this process.
So hire them before they graduate.
Offer, and this is something we need to talk about, offer an early contract, or an offer an early contract, or a memo that says you have a job here, we will place you once you get here, but you have a job. That's huge. We can't go to recruitment fairs right now with that when we see some outstanding candidates. I've been at the table when we see an outstanding candidate come, and they're excited about our organization, and then they go to the next table, and it's a bigger district who has 5 early contracts, and they say, you can sign here now, and you'll have a job, and they go to the other place. Well, we're trying to create some systems to avoid that as we mature with the system.
Just point of information, Dr. Brown, under the system though, you couldn't really have someone sign at a recruitment fair because they wouldn't be giving an interview.
No.
So how do they
or
do
a
that?
performance, but
do they do that? They make some sort of offer before their interview?
Yeah, I've seen folks do that.
They can do it anywhere.
I've seen it happen.
The superintendent, under the policy and regs we have, always has the ability to do a superintendent's appointment. What happens with some job fairs, particularly the larger ones, is there are interview rooms that candidates, you can take them immediately back and go through an interview process with. So it's, and hopefully we will have the screening process done while we're heading towards the recruitment fair. So,
do you think we're at a disadvantage by not? Some of that sounds. To hire somebody.
Yes, you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
We are at a disadvantage.
Absolutely.
We just willy-nilly go with. That doesn't sound like good procedure.
Jay, if you're a big city district and I need to hire literally thousands of teachers this year, I'm gonna go ahead and hire. And
well, and it's not always an unknown quantity. We could have a teacher from another district who is deciding whether or not to wait for a recall because she's been laid off, or here's your contract with Ithaca. Don't worry about being recalled at your district. Come work for us. And we're not having any teacher layoffs, which is very unusual as you look around the area here.
Well, those high-value teachers, what is it, strings, science, those...
STEM.
Well, I thought the strength teachers were just as valuable as far as really tough to get
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of,
Are we seeing any interest from teachers who are on the layoff? I mean, have people call?
administrators especially.
Well, you see it in the news. Binghamton, Vestal, Maine Enwell, they're all laying off at least 25 FTE. All three of those districts, plus other districts throughout the southern tier.
Elmira's 125.
125 FTE in
And
Elmira.
that's after last year was.
So there's
You have to be your You're having different conversations right now, aren't you, Bob?
It's amazing. I mean, you should commend yourselves.
Elmira is about a $125 million budget, and they're laying off 125 teachers. And they still...
No, 125 staff. I'm sorry.
Staff, sorry, FT staff. Right, staff. And they still have budget deficits to meet. So it puts us in a position that we prefer to be in, I guess. What else, Dr. Brown, regarding this?
So we've done our human capital approach to the budget, unless there are other questions, we're done for tonight.
Right, I wasn't sure whether there was another piece, but I didn't know how quickly to push Bob out of here, but right, since there's no other human capital we're going to talk about, is there any other questions of Bob and Dr. Brown regarding
Seth and I was just discussing, looking at the process, and I was telling him from my standpoint, our process of hiring has to change. That is your first introduction to these applicants and to what our expectations are. And it goes back to our excellence. And if you look at the different pieces we talked about in this evening, we have to change that first introduction. We have to. So I know Bob and I have had discussions about this, and we talked about the different pieces and what one looks like versus the other. But not speaking to the early offers of contracts, just the hiring process.
in total as a whole? Yeah. So we appreciate the work that Bob and all the Susan and all the others that have been involved with putting together a rubric, which I always have trouble saying her word. So if we are done with human capital at this point, if we could loop around and consider the resolution that was passed out and regarding the contract.
I'll move the resolution authorizing the superintendent to enter into the collective bargaining agreement with the education support professionals.
As written, right, as presented, as written. Chris seconded. Any questions regarding that at this point?
I'll say thanks to Bob for his work on this. Thanks to the union. I know they had a change in leadership in the middle of this process, and that made it drag on a bit, but glad they were able to reach a resolution. For those listening at home, it's the 2010-11, 11-12, 12-13, and 13-14 years. So it's a 4-year contract, almost 2 of which is in the rearview mirror at this point.
And this contract addresses that rearview mirror, correct? Right. And we do, at least we do have a few years here that we have an agreed upon contract with one of our unions, and we always appreciate that. Anything else? All in favor? That's everyone, with 2 absentee. And Dr. Brown, I think you had, before we just finished up with public, you had something, Dr. Brown.
Yeah, just one quick thing, and thank you for this little bit of time. I'm having much fun and it's bringing much joy to my heart to travel through the district to give to folks who've earned a service award. I've been having conversations with folks who've earned, who spent there 20 years, 25 years, and 30 years in the district, and some 35 years. And giving those awards out to those folks and shaking their hands and hearing their stories about what they experienced here has been just great for me. With that said, I have one award that I've had a hard time getting to an individual, because every time I see this individual, she's passing me to talk to someone else, or I'm talking to someone else, and when we do get a chance to talk together, we're so focused because we have a finite amount of time. But I interact with this person every day, and it hit me tonight that I haven't given her an award. And that's Susan Mitchell. She's been here 30 years doing this work. I don't know how we survived it or she survived it, but after 30 years, after 30 years of doing what she does and doing it with the same passion and intensity, and I mean those passion and intensity words, but also that same love for children, because in front of everything she says, I do see children. I wish to thank her for her 30 years of service and to have an award for you tonight, since you can never come see me to do this. To do it as well. Thank you.
So now you know I'm at least 35.
Congratulations, congratulations, Susan.
Thank you.
That's very nice, Dr. Brown. This
was the right place to do that.
Yes, very time and place. Forever captured on
TV.
On the minutes on TV. Just a second. Any other board reports? Anything for the group? Right? Nothing. Okay. Committees, etc. Are we good? And Brad, it looks like you were thinking.
Well, yeah, no, I'll move we go into executive session for the discussion of personnel matters.
I have to do reprise first.
Okay, sorry.
Reprise, anyone?
I'm sorry.
And then
you said you were down to the end, so I was...
Well, I was getting it. But go ahead, Susan.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the award. It's an endurance award as much as anything else. And it's true, I still have a passion for the kids. And I make sure that every week I'm in classrooms and in all the buildings, because that's really where you find out what's happening. A few things to think about. Not a complaint, not a concern, but just to think about. TOSA roles are very important. Teachers on special assignment. I'm very concerned. There are laws like the DeVentis ruling about how you accrue seniority and tenure, whether you teach in or out of your tenure area, and how we preserve the sanctity of your work ethic in a TOSA, so that I'm working very hard that when we do assign teachers on special assignment, we know how long, and we're clear about what the expectation is. So when we look at effective and highly effective individuals, we also know what the goals are. Goals and objectives are important in order to achieve them. So in this process, I know it's a process of change, but I do have concern. I want to know who's going to supervise them, how it's going to work, how does the evaluation work, is there enough time to be sure that they're tenured, that they are all effective or highly effective teachers. And you can't be highly effective in everything, but we need to choose our candidates wisely. And often being older doesn't necessarily make you wiser, so that when we choose these individuals, we want people who have a commitment and want to be there. So these are things just to think about as we do it. I think that people are addressing the difference between coaches and TOSAs carefully. On the professional standards and practice boards, there's a lot of discussion about teaching standards currently, which is very important. We have to look to that. And national board certification, which sets the standards that we look at for excellence in teaching. So we're going to come to the board to look at whether or not we want to take and adopt some of those standards as a key to what excellence is as we place these people in, and look for support. I also am supporting the superintendent in his view that evaluation-based evidence, what we're looking at and how we decide what we're doing, needs to be clearly defined, and it's very murky water at the moment. What is evidence? What is subjective? What is opinion? We all come with a bias when we go observe. So as we look at the candidates as they come in, which classroom are we putting them in? How much information can we give them? We want to protect the privacy of the children under HIPAA and so on. But when we have emotionally and medically fragile children within a room, and you put a teacher in and they go over to do proximity and try to place their hand on the shoulder and the child goes ballistic, we have set this teacher up for disaster. So how we're going to work this out, this is part of our conversation, but I want you to know this takes time. I am very concerned. We put in a lot of time, but teachers are telling me I'm not going to be available one Thursday of every month. I don't want to leave the room. So this is an issue. Although we're looking at a good process, I don't know how you're going to meet it with time, and that concerns me. FTE allocations, although we are blessed and you are to be thanked for your careful and prudent use of budget, we actually will have people leaving because of reorganization. So as publicly as I can say we're not laying people off, there are people who will not be returning, and we need to be sensitive to that and aware of that, so that that's what it is. The other thing about the hiring issue is that there are going to be essays on those, so that people will be writing, and we will be reading those before we even make contact. And we have talked about having key ideas on what we want the answers to look like, or what are the important points. If you ever graded an essay or an exam, you know that we point out what you're looking for. So if you're going to hire somebody and you're in the financial business, you may want someone to be able to do percentages in mathematics because it might be helpful. We need to clearly identify what skills we need mastery in. And as much as I trust Dr. Brown, I don't think any one person should automatically hire. That we have a great team process. We got to figure out how to do it. We can offer potential, but we should have more than one person looking at an individual to hire them. I'm glad to be able to work on this. I thank you for the time. And 30 years went almost quickly. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Now we're ready for Brad or Seth to say the words.
The words.
Say the words.
I move that we go into executive session to discuss the personnel matters of particular.
Second by Chris. Thanks, everybody.